What's up, friends? Today we're going to be talking about the Flipsky VX4 remote and its issues as it has come to market. This VX4 is a brand new offering from Flipsky in the screen remote market, and it's very pretty, very interesting, but it's really had a bumpy start. So in this video we're going to talk about updating the firmware. We'll use Flipsky's video and their software to do that, and I'll show you some of the issues that I've had to hopefully make the process smoother for you guys. Now, let me know if you like this, and I do believe I'll be making a second video on this for my official first impressions. Hopefully for that video I will have it actually working on my board. I have it working on my test bench setup, but not my real mountain board yet. So hopefully we'll get that figured out for next time, but this video is all about updating the firmware. Alright, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the firmware update, we're just going to do a super quick unboxing, and there's not a ton here in the package, so it'll be really quick. First, we've got a user manual. It has the basic instructions in it, nothing super fancy, but it does have colors printed on it, which can be helpful. It's got your wiring diagram, a couple different explanations of different settings, and we'll go through all of that in the first look video. Now, the next thing we've got is the actual remote itself. So it's got a little screen protector on it, and comes with a lanyard. We've also got a USB-C cable, which you will use to actually do the programming, which we're going to do in this video. We've got, you also charge it with that. The only port on here is USB-C port, so you'll charge and be able to program with that. We've got the receiver, which also has an additional wire hanging off of it for the battery voltage. We've got a small PWM connector, which you can use instead of using the UART control. So on here we have just the 3 wires, signal, ground, and positive. And then we've also got the connector for a V6 version of the VESC-based ESC architecture. Now, it's kind of weird that they only include the V6 now. It used to be that you would get both of them in the box, and that was convenient, especially for people who use their remote in different places, or maybe they have a V4 ESC and then they upgrade and then they don't have a cable. So kind of weird move for them to take that away. You can select either on the website, but they only give you the cable for one. So a little bit unfortunate there, but we'll make do. I have extra cables and stuff if I need them. Now, we will most likely be using this in UART mode only. That's what I had planned originally. I couldn't get it to work on my one ESC. I have 2 ESCs that are V6 that aren't being used right now. One is in my mountain board build, and the other one is on my test bench. And I couldn't get it working on the mountain board, but it works fine on the test bench, so who knows. Both of those were in UART control, so that's pretty much all the components that are in here. Not a lot, but you don't need a lot to make a remote work. So let's go ahead, get this powered on, and we'll get into the firmware update. Alright, so the next step we're going to do before doing the firmware is we're going to pair the remote to the receiver. Now, I think you can do this process with it paired or before it's paired, but we're going to go ahead and pair it anyway. So we'll go ahead and follow the instructions on here. So basically what we're going to do is we'll do this little peel here first. Very nice. And we'll go ahead and turn on the remote. So now the remote is on, and we will be able to do the next step. So we're going to go ahead and press the setting button for 2 seconds to go into the menu, and pairing mode is the first option. So we're going to long press the setting button again, and now it is blinking. So now it is in pairing mode. And now we need to connect the receiver to the ESC. So I've got my little receiver right here. I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my DV75 and power it on. So got it plugged in and power it on. Now you can see the blue light, and I believe that will have paired it. If we go back and look here, you can see that it has returned to its original screen. And this test bench over here is already set up. So now this is connected and working over there. So now that our remote is paired to its receiver, we're going to go ahead and commence with the firmware upgrade process. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to go ahead and pull up the actual Flipsky video, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video to make sure you guys are able to follow along with that. So I'll be following along with it in the background, but showing you guys what exactly to do on my own computer. So I'll check in with you guys in just a second. All right, so the next step of this process is the first step of the firmware process. So what we're going to do is go to the link that I provided in the description, which is to Flipsky's blog, and you're going to go ahead and click the Google Drive link there, and I'll switch over to a screen recording now so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I went ahead and clicked this Google Drive link to get their software, and you can see that it is kind of a large download, but you need all of this. So we'll hit download, and should just take a second. Now what we're going to do is go show in folder. So now you have this .rar file, and the easiest way to deal with this is to have WinZip installed, but I do not. Anyway, so you do need a unzip utility, so I just went ahead and downloaded WinRAR. You can use 7-zip or whatever you want, but since this is a RAR file, we're going to go ahead and run it, and we're going to do extract to, and we'll extract that to that location. So now we have the, wow, there's a typo, the Flipsky serial IAP software. We're going to go in there and click on the USB UART driver. So if you've never seen this chaser thing before, you don't need to worry about it too much. This is not as interesting as one might think it is. Basically, all it is a serial interface software, and they provide that to you here. And I think we have to go in here and then set up. You're going to install, and you get device driver, install, uninstall, and we'll hit install. It'll just take a couple seconds. And now it is pre-installed in advance. So now that we have that software there, we can move on to the next step. All right, so next up we need to put the remote into the correct mode in order to receive the firmware from the computer. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and press the power and settings button for 2 seconds, and it will enter IAP mode. And next we're going to go ahead and go over to the computer. And we will open up the software that we need. So we'll go into our folder that we downloaded earlier, open the
UART transfer bin to EX flash, blah blah blah. And now let's plug in our remote. I don't know why this is such a weird shape right now. Well, anyways, the tricky part here is that sometimes you might get unlucky with the port that you select, and it might not actually be the correct one. So we want to go ahead and make sure we follow the instructions exactly. It looks like I might have gotten lucky with the correct port being selected on my first try. That did not happen to me on the first remote that I did this on, so your mileage may vary, but let's see. Let's make sure that we're doing this correctly. Open port green is displayed. Load the VX4 TX app bin. So we're going to go ahead and open that TX app bin, and this is not a very helpful interface to understand what's going on, but if you click start sending and literally nothing happens, that means you selected the wrong port. So let's close port and let's try COM3. And we'll try that one. And it was not that one either, so this is perfectly demonstrating my point. So it's not COM3, it's not COM6, let's try COM4. There's probably a way to figure out which one is the correct one in Windows, but I don't really know what that is. And it is not COM4 either. Let's try COM5. Not that one either. So that means it must be COM7, right? Just make sure we got this selected here. There we go, it's COM7. So you can see it immediately started sending the data, and you can see on the screen of the remote now that it says it is updating, and that is definitely what we want to see. So we'll go ahead and wait for this to write over. And there you go. It looks like the remote automatically turned off and went into charging mode. So let's go back and look at the instructions and make sure that's all. Yep, so that means the remote is successfully updated. So now our remote is done, and now we need to do the receiver. Alright, so for this next step, we're going to be updating the firmware on the receiver. And for this, we've got to get everything involved. You've got computer, remote, and receiver to turn on and configure. So first thing we're going to do is make sure our remote is connected to the computer, which it already is. Now we're going to want to go ahead and turn on the remote. So we'll turn it on like normal. And now the remote is on. We're going to enter the settings and scroll down until we get to the very end, which is going to be IAP receiver. I guess I could have gone the other direction and we're going to go ahead and short press this, and you'll see that it says start on the screen here. Now we need to connect the receiver to the ESC, and hopefully there will be a red light flashing on there. This part is somewhat annoying because sometimes it doesn't flash, and you have to turn the controller on and off a bunch of times to get it to flash. But eventually you will be able to see the red light flashing, and we're going to go ahead and try to do that right now. So you're not going to see me on screen. I'm going to switch over to my other camera views, but I'm going to go walk over to my receiver and turn on the ESC, and hopefully it will just enter into the bootload mode the first time, but it probably won't. So let's see what happens. So over here with the receiver, I'm going to go ahead and power on, and magically this time it somehow went straight into bootload. I wish it was this easy the time that I did it on my other remote, because like I said, I have two of these, so the mileage may vary, as I have clearly shown here. So now the red light is flashing, and I'm going to go back to the software. I think we can just bring this up sideways here. Yeah, so we're going to go back to the software here, and now we're still connected to the computer. I didn't unplug the remote, so we should still be on the right COM port. So now we're going to go ahead and open the receiver file, and we see that there. So now let's click start sending, and you can see on the remote that it is sending to the receiver. Now we just gotta wait for that process to finish. Now it'll just take a second. As you can see, the red light is still flashing, and it looks like it just finished. So the remote went back into normal mode. The receiver has a blue light on it now, and we see data all send is done. So that was pretty easy, actually. Besides the COM port thing, this one didn't have any issues, but on the last receiver that I updated, I had to turn the ESC on and off like 6 times to get it to enter that red flashing mode. So if you have trouble with it entering that mode, just keep trying and it should get there eventually. So I think I'm going to make sure everything's working, and then we will do a little outro. I'm not going to quite record an outro yet. I have a few things to say before we close this out, but if you can hear the sound of my test bench, the remote is working properly now. I'm going to try and get this one configured on my mountain board since the other one didn't work properly. We'll see what happens, but that'll be for another video. But this whole problem would not have existed if Flipsky did extensive testing in-house. Now, this has been something that the e-skate community has kind of let slide for a really long time. And there's just so many companies out there sending out untested products that break on arrival, have problems on arrival, and just generally feel like they're not quite finished. And honestly, it's starting to get a little bit unacceptable. Now, I bought into the first set of the VX4 users on purpose to show you guys the remote. And I was probably one of the first ones that bought it. And then later, Flipsky contacted me about doing a video on it, so I have 2 of them now. One that I bought and one that they sent to me. Now, these are both from the same batch, so they both had the same firmware, the firmware version 1.0 or whatever, that had the connection issues that I couldn't even connect to my board. the first time, and ultimately ended up with them patching the firmware, fixing the connection, and they seem to be running fine now on the new firmware. But the fact of the matter is, it really brings up the question of, did they even test this at all in-house? I mean, they've got to have tons of ESCs and motors and everything sitting around since they make all this stuff. You would think and hope that a company like this would test their remotes before they send them to customers. Buying into the very first set, I did expect there to be some hiccups, but it really felt like we were almost beta testers and giving them feedback to fix their remote that they released for full sale. So I'm happy with how Flipsky has dealt with this, helping us out, figuring out and troubleshooting with users individually. But man, you guys got to get better. I think that this is a little bit unacceptable to ship such a broken product without the users knowing. So anyway, take from that what you will. That's just my 2 cents on how people really need to be testing their products before they send them to customers. So anyway, I hope you guys have found this firmware update video useful. I know Flipsky has their own video, and that's useful, but I want to give this to you guys to show you some of the struggles that I went through and just show how the process looks. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, any concerns. And if there's anything you want me to test on the VX4 specifically, I'll be happy to do that. I'm going to be making a first impressions video on it pretty soon here, as soon as I get it working with my board. I think that's all for now. So stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.